Elijah Thompson, a highly respected black attorney for the Supreme Court, was driving home after a late-night charity gala in a serene, small-town neighborhood in Texas. Known for its charm and quiet streets, the town was a haven for professionals seeking peace after long days of work. Elijah, in particular, cherished these moments of solitude where the only sound accompanying him was the soft hum of his brand-new Tesla. The sleek car was a recent gift he had rewarded himself for securing a landmark victory in a high-profile civil rights case, a testament to his years of dedication and resilience in the face of systemic challenges. The evening was cool and still, with stars scattered across the Texan sky, offering a comforting backdrop to Elijah's thoughts. He reflected on the gala, where he had delivered a stirring speech about justice and equality, and the path that had brought him to this moment. Elijah's life had been marked by perseverance, rising from modest beginnings in an underserved community to becoming a symbol of hope for those marginalized by society. Despite his achievements, he never allowed himself to forget the inequities he had faced, using them as fuel to advocate for change. As he navigated the quiet streets toward home, a rare smile crept across his face. For once, he felt at ease, the weight of his work temporarily set aside. However, beneath the calm exterior of his picturesque neighborhood, unseen forces of prejudice lingered, ready to shatter this fleeting moment of tranquility. Elijah, unaware of the storm about to unfold, was about to face a trial unlike any he had ever encountered, not in a courtroom, but on the very streets of the community he called home. As Elijah Thompson made his way home through the quiet streets of his picturesque Texas town, the tranquility of the evening was abruptly interrupted by flashing blue and red lights in his rearview mirror. Puzzled, Elijah furrowed his brow, wondering what could have prompted the stop. His driving had been meticulous, and the Tesla was properly registered. Remaining calm, he pulled over to the side of the road, carefully keeping his hands on the steering wheel, a practice ingrained in him from years of understanding the potential dangers of being a black man interacting with law enforcement. Officer Megan Turner, a young, ambitious cop with a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped out of the patrol car. Her rigid posture and sharp gaze hinted at her mindset, one shaped by past trauma and a deep-seated suspicion of individuals she deemed out of place. As she approached Elijah's car window, her tone was curt, bordering on confrontational. "License and registration," Megan ordered, her voice devoid of politeness. Elijah complied without hesitation, maintaining a composed demeanor as he handed over the documents. "Officer, may I ask what seems to be the issue?" he inquired, his voice calm and steady. Megan glanced at the papers but barely acknowledged his question. "This car matches the description of a stolen vehicle from a nearby dealership," she replied, her tone sharp and unyielding. Before Elijah could respond, Megan took a step back, her hand hovering near her holstered weapon, a move that sent a clear and unsettling message. Elijah's mind raced, but he maintained his composure. "Officer, I assure you, this is my car. I purchased it recently, and all documentation is in order. You're welcome to verify the details in the system," he said firmly, yet respectfully. Megan, however, seemed uninterested in clarification. Her judgment had already been clouded by biases she refused to confront. Instead of verifying his information, Megan called for backup, escalating the situation unnecessarily. Elijah, feeling the familiar weight of unjust suspicion, sat silently as tension mounted. The once peaceful street now felt oppressive, the flashing lights illuminating the stark reality of racial prejudice. As neighbors began to peek through their windows, the scene became more than a routine stop. It transformed into a public display of humiliation and systemic bias. Elijah braced himself, knowing this was no ordinary encounter. This would be a test of his resilience and his belief in justice, even in the face of blatant discrimination. As Officer Megan Turner stood by Elijah Thompson's Tesla, her hand resting near her holster, a second police car pulled up. The backup, Officer Daniel Clark, emerged with a calm yet skeptical demeanor. While Clark was more experienced and less overtly confrontational, he refrained from challenging Megan's authority directly. The air was heavy with tension, and Elijah, ever composed, could feel the situation teetering on the edge of escalation. Megan's unwavering gaze and clipped tone left no room for compromise. Ignoring Elijah's repeated offers to verify the car's ownership through the system, she declared her intent to search the vehicle. Clark hesitated briefly, but ultimately deferred to Megan, a move that sent a clear signal. Elijah's identity and credentials didn't matter in that moment. With mounting frustration, Elijah stepped aside, watching as Megan and Clark began searching his car. Despite his exterior calm, a fire burned within him, a mix of indignation and humiliation. As Megan rifled through the trunk, she pulled out a black duffel bag that neither she nor Elijah had seen before. "What's this?" she asked, her tone laced with suspicion. The bag contained counterfeit bills and a receipt dated earlier that day from a local store. Elijah's chest tightened as he stared at the bag, his mind racing. "That's not mine," he said firmly, his voice steady but edged with anger. Megan's expression hardened. "Convenient," she replied with thinly veiled sarcasm. "A stolen car and suspicious evidence? You expect me to believe this is all a coincidence?" By now, curious neighbors began to gather, peeking from windows and stepping onto porches. Some held up their phones, recording the unfolding scene. Among them was Gloria Wilkins, a longtime resident and friend of Elijah. Recognizing him immediately, she stepped closer, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. "What are you doing to him? That man's a judge, an honorable man," she declared loudly, rallying the attention of others. As the scene drew more eyes, Megan's confidence faltered, though she refused to back down. Meanwhile, Clark began to question the direction the encounter was taking. The growing crowd, murmurs of concern, and flashing cameras turned the situation into a public spectacle. Elijah stood silently amidst the chaos, his dignity intact despite the escalating humiliation, determined to fight for justice in the face of this unwarranted ordeal. As the tension reached its peak, Elijah Thompson stood resolute, his calm demeanor masking a storm of frustration. Officer Megan Turner clung stubbornly to her belief in Elijah's guilt, refusing to consider the possibility of error. The discovery of the planted duffel bag had further emboldened her, even as cracks began to show in her confidence. Her backup, Officer Daniel Clark, remained visibly uneasy, his glances between Megan and Elijah revealing a growing doubt about the legitimacy of the situation. By now, the scene had drawn a larger crowd of onlookers. Neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk, phones recording, voices murmuring in disbelief. Among them was Gloria Wilkins, whose fiery determination to defend Elijah had turned her into the voice of the community. "This isn't right," she declared, stepping closer to the scene. "You're accusing an innocent man without evidence, in front of his own neighbors. Shame on you!" Megan, struggling to maintain control, raised her voice. "Ma'am, step back. This is a police matter, and I'll ask you not to interfere." But Gloria was undeterred. "Interfere? If you were doing your job properly, no one would need to interfere," she shot back, her tone sharp with indignation. Her words stirred the crowd, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the growing group. The arrival of Police Chief Robert Hayes marked a turning point. A man of stern authority, Hayes strode onto the scene, his face darkening as he recognized Elijah. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his booming voice silencing the crowd. Megan, visibly nervous, attempted to justify her actions, citing the stolen car report and the bag of counterfeit money. However, Hayes' expression shifted to one of disbelief. "Did you verify his identity before escalating this?" he asked coldly. Megan hesitated, her confidence crumbling. "No, sir," she admitted quietly. Hayes turned to Elijah, his tone heavy with regret. "Judge Thompson, I deeply apologize for this mistake." He immediately ordered Megan to remove the handcuffs. As Elijah's wrists were freed, the crowd erupted in a mix of relief and anger. Turning to Hayes, Elijah's voice was steady but cutting. "This is more than a mistake, Chief. It's a reflection of the biases embedded in your system. Apologies mean nothing without action." The chief nodded solemnly, acknowledging the weight of Elijah's words. The encounter wasn't just a personal injustice. It had become a public reckoning with the systemic issues that plagued law enforcement. With the situation de-escalated and Elijah Thompson freed, the atmosphere remained heavy with unresolved tension. The neighbors, emboldened by Gloria Wilkins' fiery defense and the visible accountability imposed by Police Chief Robert Hayes, refused to disperse quietly. Many still held their phones aloft, capturing the scene as evidence of the injustice they had witnessed. Elijah stood tall amidst the crowd, his composure a powerful contrast to the chaos that had unfolded. Turning to the gathered neighbors, Elijah addressed them with a commanding yet calm voice. "This isn't just about me. Tonight, we've seen what happens when prejudice goes unchecked, how a single bias can strip away someone's dignity and trust in the system meant to protect them." His words resonated deeply with the crowd, sparking nods of agreement and murmurs of support. Meanwhile, Megan Turner stood at the sidelines, her earlier defiance now replaced by visible shame and introspection. She watched as Chief Hayes stepped forward, his voice firm but tempered with regret. "On behalf of the department, I offer my sincerest apologies to Judge Thompson and to this community. What happened tonight was unacceptable, and we will ensure it doesn't happen again." Elijah seized the moment to press for meaningful action. "Apologies aren't enough," he said. "This department needs to address the biases that led to this. It's time for training, accountability, and transparency." Chief Hayes, recognizing the validity of Elijah's demands, publicly committed to implementing reforms, including community engagement initiatives and mandatory bias training for officers. Crowd began to disperse, but the impact of the night lingered. For Elijah, this wasn't an ending but the beginning of a broader fight. He had turned a personal humiliation into a rallying cry for justice, setting the stage for systemic change in his community and beyond. The events of that fateful night quickly rippled beyond the quiet streets of Elijah Thompson's neighborhood. Videos captured by neighbors spread rapidly across social media, igniting a nationwide conversation about systemic bias in law enforcement. Hashtags like "Justice for Elijah" and "Zendracial Bias" trended for days as people across the country weighed in on the blatant injustice Elijah had endured. The footage of a respected black attorney being handcuffed and humiliated in his own community became a powerful symbol of the systemic issues plaguing policing. Elijah, never one to shy away from a fight for justice, used the momentum to advocate for change. He organized a town hall meeting at the local community center, inviting neighbors, activists, and city officials to join a dialogue on addressing bias within law enforcement. The meeting drew a packed crowd, with standing room, only attendees eager to hear Elijah speak. His words were powerful, emphasizing that the night's events weren't just about his experience, but about the countless others who faced similar injustices daily. "We must acknowledge the biases within our system," he declared. "This isn't just a police issue, it's a community issue, and it requires all of us to act." Amid the discussion, Megan Turner made an unexpected appearance. With visible hesitation, but a newfound sense of accountability, she took the microphone and issued a heartfelt apology to Elijah and the community. "What I did was wrong," she admitted. "I let my own biases cloud my judgment, and I'm committed to making this right, not just with words, but with action." Her pledge to undergo bias training and lead community engagement initiatives was met with cautious optimism. For many, her public admission marked a small step toward healing. Elijah's story had sparked a movement, transforming a moment of injustice into a catalyst for meaningful reform and collective action. The story of Elijah Thompson did not end with apologies or promises. It became a rallying cry for justice and a reflection of the systemic biases that pervade law enforcement and society at large. The town hall meeting Elijah organized was only the beginning of a broader movement. His words, captured and shared widely on social media, resonated with people far beyond his small Texas community. "Change begins with us," he had said to the crowd that evening. "If we remain silent, the systems that oppress us will never change. We must demand accountability, transparency, and fairness." Elijah's speech highlighted the need for systemic reform, including mandatory bias training for officers, improved transparency in policing practices, and stronger community oversight. His ability to turn personal humiliation into an opportunity for education and advocacy inspired many. Across the nation, communities began holding similar dialogues, inspired by his courage and determination to confront injustice head-on. Meanwhile, Officer Megan Turner's public apology marked the start of her own transformation. She took Elijah's words to heart, becoming an advocate for change within her department. She participated in community workshops, engaged in difficult conversations about implicit bias, and even spearheaded initiatives to rebuild trust between law enforcement and residents. For Elijah, the fight was far from over. He continued to use his platform as a respected attorney to push for legislative changes and broader societal awareness. "This isn't just my story," he reminded audiences in interviews and speeches. "It's the story of every person who has been judged unfairly, silenced, or marginalized. Together, we can create a system where justice truly means justice for all." Elijah's unwavering stance served as a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that real change requires collective effort, sustained action, and a refusal to accept the status quo. His story became a symbol of resilience and the power of unity in the face of injustice. Today's story isn't just about confronting injustice. It's a powerful reminder that change begins when we stand up for what is right. If you were in Elijah's shoes, how would you react? Would you fight relentlessly for justice to ensure your voice is heard, one, or choose to compromise and avoid escalation to protect yourself from further harm? 2. Let us know by leaving a comment with either number 1 or 2 below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to support more meaningful stories like this one.